everybody this afternoon. Like he said, I work for the National Football League, so while we maybe don't agree on what we all call football or what our primary sport is, hopefully over the course of this talk we can agree on some ways that we can improve our developer experience and give our teams a better time. One quick thing before I do that. Oh, the sound.
Of this broadcast or any pictures, descriptions, or accounts of the game without the...
Sorry.
This broadcast is copyrighted by NFL Productions for the private use of our audience. Any other use of this broadcast or any pictures, descriptions, or accounts of the game without the consent of NFL Productions is prohibited.
Just a little joke there. Obviously, I got clearance before I did this talk, but that airs before every one of our games. So I know this is a live stream. We're good to go there. But today I'm going to talk about how at the NFL, over the course of the last year, we rebuilt our entire CI/CD pipeline from scratch. And so
this broadcast is copyrighted by NFL.
There we go. Just a little bit of background on React Native at the NFL. We started our journey with React Native back in 2017. Originally, we had a pretty good-sized web team and a smaller Android and iOS native teams. Probably pretty familiar story to other folks, but we merged everybody together back in the end of 2017 and started working on our primary flagship app. That's the Blue NFL app. So we launched that app back in July of 2018, and then followed quickly afterwards with our fantasy football application. That's the blue one, and a separate app just for watching our 24/7 NFL Network channel. And a little bit later, we launched our connected TV application using React Native tvOS. So that application's available on Apple TV, Amazon, Android TV, or Fire TV, sorry. And also, we use that same exact code base using React Native Web to distribute that for Xbox, LG, and Vizio as well. And so over the course of this time, we have developed quite a bit of our applications there. And so we started that, like I said, back in 2017. We chose a mono-repo structure for that. And at that time, we had to roll all of our own build systems. We were hosting all of our hardware on premises. So we had the old trash can Macs in our data center, certainly not great for heat retention. And we had our on-prem hosted Linux boxes as well. We were using GitHub Enterprise. We had Jenkins for our job orchestration. And we wrote all our own Fastlane build scripts for that process. Jenkins was a little bit more opaque to us and how all of it worked. We used App Center to distribute. We didn't use that for any of our build systems, but we used it to distribute across all of our internal and external testers. And then, like so many folks in the JavaScript ecosystem, we used Yarn as our package manager, ESLint, and Prettier to really round out the whole core of that developer experience. So over the course of the last couple years, like many enterprise companies, we've been in the process of shifting off of our own on-prem hardware over to cloud infrastructure. And so for our React Native pipeline, you took our initiative to move over to cloud services, coupled with the Microsoft App Center announcement that they were shutting down at the beginning of, or the end of the fiscal year on March 31st. So we took this as an opportunity to start fresh and rebuild all of the pipeline. So this was our front-end platform modernization project, and we really had 4 key objectives there. Like I mentioned before, we were using 24/7 reserved hardware, and we really wanted to find opportunities to reduce our cost by shifting to more on-demand resourcing. We wanted to give our developers a better developer experience and give them a boost of productivity where we could by focusing on newer tooling, and then try to unlock some new collaboration opportunities in that development workflow. And we had been spending a lot of time maintaining that hardware, whether it's we were running into CocoaPod caching issues or Yarn cache. So we used to have to bring the data center people in there to actually go and turn on and off the Mac Pros, because even if we had the KVM switches, it wasn't always working reliably. So we wanted to reduce the maintenance overhead when it came time to update Mac OS or Xcode or any of those pieces that I'm sure many of y'all have felt. And then, like I said, we started this project quite a long time ago, so we have many, many years worth of technical debt. And then in that time, we wanted to try to find the best-in-class service providers or solutions out there, and then just reset on what is the latest and greatest technology here in 2024, now 2025, of course. So, don't want to bury the lead too much, but when we came time to choose our next setup, we first started by migrating our whole code base off of our on-prem GitHub Enterprise over to github.com. At first, we just kept everything the same. It was still connecting to the Jenkins build. We wanted to make sure that all that stayed in place so that our teams wouldn't experience any service degradation or the parts of the workflow that they were used to using just magically disappeared. So we kept all of that in place at the same time. And then we slowly started to rebuild everything using GitHub Actions. And one of the key benefits of that for us was that in our old Jenkins environment, we had dedicated, like a very specific limited hardware. And so we would end up with pretty long build queues at certain times of the day whenever all of the team members we're pretty distributed across the world, but still most people are with us there in the Pacific time zone. And so with our GitHub Actions, we're able to use our AWS hosted instance runners, and then we can scale up dynamically. We set a cap so we don't go crazy, but we're able to scale up during the course of the day. And really, we saw that our queue times were able to be cut dramatically. And then also, our previous Jenkins setup wasn't a containerized environment, and so we would run into like mutex lock issues with Yarn cache or CocoaPods trying to update at the same time when multiple jobs were happening. And so really the containerized environment that GitHub Actions provided was another really big benefit there as well. And kind of a smaller piece, but our team has enjoyed it. The way that the Jenkins setup, at least for us, was kind of opaque. We weren't able to contribute, weren't able to make tweaks to it as easily. But now with the GitHub Actions code being all part of the same source control system, we're able to see it there. Everybody's able to contribute and make tweaks as necessary. So as we started to find performance improvement opportunities, kind of the first area we tackled was in our linting and formatting steps. Once we switched everything over and really started having individual builds, we were seeing that with the code base of our size, lint and prettier would each take about like 5 minutes each time. And so did some exploration, thought Biome looked pretty interesting with all of its like all-in-one approach. And let me tell you, the speed on Biome has been like really remarkable. We were able to take those 2 different 5-minute builds and cut them down to about 15 seconds. And it's especially interesting in the GitHub Action where they have a native binary, so you don't even have to do a yarn install. It can do the linting and formatting, everything, on average, like I said, in about 15 seconds for our code base. And then the next major speed boost we saw was when we switched over to Yarn v4. Once we got to React Native 74, we were able to make that adjustment pretty quickly. And so on average, we saw about a 2.5-minute reduction in each Yarn install, which became extra important when everything was modular and containerized in the GitHub Actions environment. So those 2 things added up pretty dramatically. And then when it came to actually build our applications, we thought that the choice was pretty clear from what we saw in the ecosystem. Excuse me. And so we decided to go with Expo and EAS. I'll get into some specifics around how we have our EAS configuration, but I think an interesting part of it is when we first started building our React Native applications, Expo was in a very different place. We had a decent enough of our own native code, so it wasn't the right time for us. Like, it just couldn't be used, right? And so just over the course of the last year, we were able to, first we just switched over to Expo CLI, kept everything else the same. It was building on our Jenkins boxes still. And then we incorporated the full Expo SDK, and that was, like, initially it was just because we wanted the full setup, and like images was a gateway into the full thing, because fast image was being deprecated. And then slowly we started to take advantage of more things, whether that's splash screen or like fonts and things like that. And so, but on the build side of things, I think we heard a couple people talk about it, but just over the year that we've been using it, our Android builds were made 40% faster, and our iOS builds were 50% faster when the team migrated over to M4 hardware to build it all. And so, like, getting into the EAS build ecosystem, we've been able to improve our speeds and really rely on our infrastructure team doesn't need to manage all of that anymore, and that's been a great improvement. So, some more specifics about how we have our applications configured for EAS. We chose 3 different variants across so we have our preview build, which is what we are generating on pull requests, and that includes dev client. I'll get into a little bit more detail here in a few about how we incorporated that into our team. And then we have a beta build, which is very similar to what we have for our production builds. And so one of the things that's unique for us and kind of allows us, Evan talked earlier about how with test flight you can get it out to 100 people really easily. We do have the benefit of having both a production account and an enterprise account, so we can sign our apps with the enterprise certificate and don't have to wrangle around with ad hoc provisioning, which obviously you can get with test flight as well. But so we distribute both those preview and beta builds through Expo's distribution system. And then finally, with our production app, we've chosen just to create a separate build there that when it's time for us to have a release candidate, we use EAS submit after it's built, and that handles the trickier pieces of getting the application up into the stores. So John talked about this earlier, but we have leaned pretty heavily into the fingerprint, into EAS fingerprints, and that has helped us dramatically cut down on the number of builds that we need to run. So every time a commit is made in a PR, we're checking the fingerprint of that commit against what is available in Expo already. And you see we have one check that does that, and if we need to, then we push up the build to Expo. If we don't, we simply generate an update and have that available on our PRs via QR code so that our teams can all check that. And this is a quick public service announcement that if you are using Expo, make sure you're updating to the latest versions of everything. Like when we started working on fingerprints with Expo 51, and occasionally we had to do some tweaking there, and the team was able to find, all right, in Expo 52, this is a much smoother process. The fingerprints have been improved pretty significantly, so it just made everything work more reliably. We weren't making extra builds, even where on 51, it was a little bit less buttoned up. And then we're using EAS updates on each of our pull requests as well. Like I mentioned, that preview build, we had to do a little bit to get the dev client to be distributed on that internal distribution build. But what's most exciting about this is that it enables all of our teams, so whether it's our product managers, our engineering leads, our manual automated QA, or even like our analytics teams, they can now check out the code, use their preview build, have that installed. So it doesn't matter if it has native code changes. In that case, we'll build the full app. Or if it's just a JavaScript change, it's actually like allowing us to shift left, as some people want to say, to make sure that we're testing that code in our real applications much easier than before it even gets into any production builds. So that was a lot, but I hope if you guys can leave this talk with just a couple things. I want to make sure that everybody knows that investing in your CI/CD pipeline will pay for itself, whether that's in your infrastructure costs or in your development team's time. It adds up. It's two of the easiest, quickest wins: upgrade to Yarn v4, and then Biome. Those will have like dramatic cost savings in time and everything. EAS build services, they're great. They just keep getting better, and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to spend your infrastructure team's time doing it. And then really excited for using EAS updates on your pull requests so that you catch bugs before they even get merged into main. It really just allows your teams to cut down on the time they have to go back and fix issues after they maybe already went in. So I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the time. Thank you very much.